I'm Megan Newquist. I've got a quick look at your Friday morning headlines, and this is a live look at your cities this morning. From Hiawatha Lake area in Minneapolis, this is the epicenter of the violent unrest that we have been seeing. Officers evacuated from the 3rd Precinct last night as rioters broke in and set that building on fire. It burned uncontrolled all night. Early this morning, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey talked about the response to these violent protests.
We need to make sure that people are looking out for our city right now. It's not just enough to do the right thing yourself. We need to be making sure that all of us are held accountable.
And the damage is not just in Minneapolis. It's spilled into St. Paul as well. This is a look at the devastation there. On Twitter, St. Paul Police Department saying that more than 170 businesses were damaged and looted. You can see fire crews here putting out the smoldering here at Lloyd's Pharmacy. Dozens of fires were reported across the city overnight, and they're good news so far. No reports of serious injuries in St. Paul at this time. Now, Chopper 5 is getting a view of all of the damage from above for us this morning. This is a look at a fire that was burning just east of Hiawatha and Interstate 94 in Minneapolis. Now, at this point, there were no fire crews on scene. A few minutes earlier in the morning, fire crews were trying to put out a fire that authorities formed a line to try to keep people out of the area so they could get those fire trucks in and let the firefighters do their jobs. At one point, our chopper pilot saw at least 7 fires burning in Minneapolis at one time. Much more of this coming up on 45, but now a quick check of the weather with Ken.
Yeah, very easy forecast, Megan. We're talking about sunshine after some morning clouds. It'll be breezy and 70 today, 72 on Saturday, 74 on Sunday. Let's get a traffic check with Josie.
As I continue to watch Hiawatha and that whole traffic area, yes, Hiawatha remains open, and we've just been seeing a lot of smoke. It's still pretty heavy here. This is west of Hiawatha, even though a lot of the activity we've been seeing since overnight is on the east side. This newer one that's popping up is more on the west side, but you can still see it's still looking pretty thick in that particular spot south of 94.
Waking up this morning to another night of chaos following the in-custody death of George Floyd. The unrest widespread across the Twin Cities. Here's what is new overnight. We have been tracking fast-moving developments in South Minneapolis all morning. Dozens of state troopers are now walking the streets, forming a line after last night's chaotic fires. The National Guard you saw there, now in the same area of South Minneapolis near Lake and Hiawatha. The Guard tweeting out saying that hundreds have been deployed. Meanwhile, Governor Tim Walz is scheduled to talk about these protests at 10 o'clock this morning. The response, hopefully we'll get a better idea of where we go from here. Several fires continued to burn overnight, many of them just burning uncontrolled at this point. Minneapolis, St. Paul, fires are still burning this morning. The 3rd Minneapolis Police Precinct right there on Lake Street was evacuated. Crews were told to abandon it, and it was then set ablaze by rioters. We have team coverage for you this morning in both St. Paul and in Minneapolis. We start in Minneapolis with our Ashley Zilka. She has a look at what appears to be a relatively calm scene considering all that we've seen this morning, Ashley, and how things were very volatile when you hit the streets around 4.
Yeah, that's right, Megan. You know, the protesters have gone home, or at least where I am at. But several hours ago, hundreds of protesters were out, even at 5:30 in the morning. And now if you look behind me, this is what we're dealing with right now. The National Guard and other law enforcement agencies on East Lake Street and 29th Avenue, they are protecting the area. They're trying to get back control of the area where you see that large cloud of smoke. That's probably where Ben is. I mean, just so many fires that are still going at this hour. And I think a large part of that is because when we were driving over there a few hours ago, there were no police officers. There were no firefighters. They couldn't get to the area because of all those protesters that we were seeing. But now this area is secure, and the National Guard and other law enforcement agencies, they are making sure no one gets past them. And I've noticed there have been no protesters out there. Few people taking some pictures of what they see behind them. And as far as cars, everyone has been listening to them, and they have been turning around. So like you mentioned, it is much calmer out here right now. But I do want to give you another look, and this is kind of what Chris has been seeing and everything. Not only the fires, but a lot of businesses, they prepared for this because they saw all of the damage and the looting yesterday. So this is a winery and cider house. They boarded up their businesses, and if you drive along Lake Street, you can see many of them have been doing that. There are lots of graffiti as well, the saying, "I can't breathe" on some of these doors. But this is the scene out here right now. And you can see, like I mentioned, all these cars are turning. They are not trying to get past the National Guard right now.
We saw this video yesterday, too, of people closing down their storefronts early and doing this boarding up, which you often see in hurricane zones. You hear about that when storms are happening. Does it seem like the buildings that were boarded up were left alone for the most part from these rioters?
I'd say half and half. Some were not touched, and I don't know if it's because of the signs that were on there, that, the community coming together, but then there are other ones that, the windows are smashed out. It's kind of what we saw yesterday morning. Some of them, the windows are not smashed out, and probably because they're boarded up, but graffiti is a big thing around here. A lot of profanity, so we don't want to show you, but there are a lot of graffiti all up and down here along these businesses.
Okay. All right, Ashley, thank you. Stay safe there. We'll get back to you in just a little bit. In the meantime, we are